mantras of our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says the first process of yoga, the first process of integral yoga is therefore to open the ranges of this inner being and to live from there outward, governing his outward life by an inner light and force, with always a love and blessing, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Words of our Lord Sri Aurobindo, taken from the collective works of our Lord Sri Aurobindo, book Letters on Yoga, volume 4, part 4, Difficulties in the Practice of Integral Yoga, section 1, first topic, the difficulties of the path, subtopic, difficulties and the aim of life. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, it is the lesson of life that always in this world everything fails a man. Only the divine does not fail him if he turns entirely to the divine. It is not because there is something bad in you that blows fall on you. Blows fall on all human beings because they are full of desire for things that cannot last and they lose them, or even if they get, it brings disappointment and cannot satisfy them. To turn to the divine is the only truth in life. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, as for the blows, well, are they always given by the yoga, integral yoga? Is it not sometimes the sadhak of the yoga who gives blows to himself? There are plenty of blows too in ordinary life, according to my experience, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Blows are the order of existence and of integral yoga. Our nature or the nature of things brings them upon us until we learn to present to them a back which they cannot touch. The ordinary life naturally has its mental, vital, physical pleasures, but it is of a superficial character and there is no firm foundation of the consciousness anywhere. All is at the mercy of the play of forces. In integral yoga, there is the period of struggle and difficulty in which the difficulty and suffering can be acute, and the period of the foundation in the true consciousness, after which there is no serious disturbance of the peace and the freedom, leading to the state of realization in all the being in which grief, etc., are impossible. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, life is for experience and growth. Until one has learned one's lesson, things go on happening that are the result of one's imperfect balance with nature or inner imperfections. All that happens is for the best is true only if we see with the cosmic eye or the cosmic view that takes in the past and future development, which is aided by ill fortune as well as good fortune, by danger, suffering, calamity, as well as happiness, success, and victory. It is not true if it means that only things happen which are fortunate or obviously good for the person in the human sense. What you describe is a nature divided against itself by a mind which has corrupted its action through a wrong use of its powers and a physical weakened by indulgence of vital desires. Introspection is good only when it is used as a means for changing the nature so as to bring it into accordance with the higher ideals steadily held before you. The present nature of man is egoistic in motive, full of falsehoods created by ignorance into which he is born, and which the mind and life accept in order to follow their ego's aims and desires. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, by introspection, one come to see that, but by itself, that can only create distrust of oneself, loss of motive to action, cynicism, and weakness. One must have the faith and aspiration towards a higher consciousness, which one has to build up in place of this lower nature. Then the introspection and the knowledge of the defects of the nature it gives becomes useful, as it helps one to see what has to be changed, while the higher ideal gives what has to take the place of the old moments and the old nature. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, but all that is not easy to do, all that is not easy to do unless you resolve to give an aim to your life and erect the higher ideal towards which you have to grow. Just as the mind can destroy the force of life and its balance, so it can do that also. It can help to restore the power on a new basis and acquire a new and greater force and true balance. But for that, you must have the will to do it. To create the will, the mind must press for faith and vision and discourage their opposites. There is no harm in writing things when they of themselves come. It may help the inner element of aspiration to grow in you, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Next subtopic, difficulties and the integral yoga. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, this integral yoga is certainly difficult, but is any yoga really easy? You speak of the lure of liberation into the extracosmic absolute, but how many who set on the path of nirvana attain to it in this life or without a long, strenuous, and difficult endeavor? Which of the paths has not to pass through the dry desert in order to reach the promised land? Even the path of bhakti, which is said to be the easiest, is full of the lamentations of the bhaktas, complaining that they call, but the beloved eludes their grasp. The place of meeting is prepared, but even now Krishna doesn't come. Even if there is the joy of a brief glimpse or the passion of Milna, it is followed by long periods of viraha. It is a mistake to think that any path of yoga is facile, that any is a royal road or a shortcut to the divine, or that like a system of French made easy or French without tears. So there can be a system of yoga made easy or yoga without tears. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, a few great souls prepared by past lives or otherwise lifted beyond the ordinary spiritual capacity may attain realization more swiftly. Some may have uplifting experiences at an early stage, but for most, the siddhi of the path, whatever it is, must be the end of a long, difficult, and persevering endeavor. One cannot have the crown of spiritual victory without the struggle or reach the heights without the ascent and its labor. Of all it can be said, difficult is that road, hard to tread like the edge of a razor. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, you find the path dry precisely because you have not yet touched the fringe of it. But all paths have their dry periods, and for most, though not for all, it is all at the beginning. There is a long stage of preparation necessary in order to arrive at the inner psychological condition. There is a long stage of preparation necessary in order to arrive at the inner psychological condition in which the doors of experience can open and one can walk from vista to vista, though even then new gates may present themselves and refuse to open until all is ready. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says this period can be dry and desert-like unless one has the ardor of self-introspection and self-conquest and finds every step of the effort and struggle interesting, or unless one has or gets that secret of trust and self-giving which sees the hand of the divine in every step of the path, and even in the difficulty, the grace or the guidance. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says the description of integral yoga as bitter like poison in the beginning because of the difficulty and struggle, but in the end sweet as nectar because of the joy of realization, the peace of liberation or the divine ananda, and the frequent description by sadhaks and bhaktas of the periods of dryness shows sufficiently that it is no unique peculiarity of this integral yoga. All the old disciplines recognize this, and it is why the Gita says that yoga should be practiced patiently and steadily with a heart that refuses to be overcome by despondency. It is a recommendation applicable to this path, but also to the way of the Gita and to the hard razor path of the Vedanta and to every other. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, it is quite natural that the higher the ananda to come down, the more difficult may be the beginning. The drier the deserts that have to be crossed on the way. Certainly, the supramental manifestation does not bring peace, purity, force, power of knowledge only. These give the necessary conditions for the final realization, are part of it, but love, beauty, and ananda are the essence of its fulfillment. And although the supreme ananda comes with the supreme fulfillment, there is no real reason why there should not be the love and ananda and beauty of the way also. Some have found, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo, some have found that even at an early stage, before there was any other experience, but the secret of it is in the heart, not the mind. The heart that opens its inner door, and through it, the radiance of the soul looks out in a blaze of trust and self-giving. Before that inner fire, the debates of the mind and its difficulties wither away, and the path, however long or arduous, becomes a sunlit road not only towards but through love and ananda. Nevertheless, even if that does not come at first, one can arrive at it by a patient perseverance. The psychic change is indeed the indispensable preliminary of any approach to the supramental path, and this change has for its very core the blossoming of the inner love, joy, and bhakti. Some may find a mental opening first, and the mental opening may bring peace, light, beginning of knowledge first. But this opening from above is incomplete unless it is followed by an opening inward to the heart. Let me repeat this. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says some may find a mental opening first, and the mental opening may bring peace, light, a beginning of knowledge first. But this opening from above is incomplete unless it is followed by an opening inward of the heart. To suppose that the yoga of integral yoga is dry and joyless because the struggles of your mind and vital have made your first approach to it dry is a misunderstanding and an error. The hidden springs of sweetness will reveal themselves if you persevere, even if now they are guarded by the dragons of doubt and unsatisfied longing. Grumble if your nature compels you to it, but persevere. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says the only thing to do with such depressing thoughts is not to indulge them, to send them away at once. Vital difficulties are the common lot of every human being and of every sadhak. They are to be met with a quiet determination and confidence in the divine grace. It needs either a calm, resolute will governing the whole being or a very great samatha to have a quiet, smooth transformation. If they are there, then there are no revolts, though there may be difficulties, no attacks, only a conscious dealing with the defects of the nature. No faults, but only setting right of the wrong steps or moments. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says these obstacles can only be got rid of gradually by persistent sadhana. The alternation of dark and bright states is normal and inevitable. The headache, if it comes, is only a result of the body not being accustomed to the pressure or else to some resistance there. The difficulties, of course, rise up, but it is not always in the beginning. Sometimes the first effect is such that one feels as if there were no difficulties. They rise afterwards when the exaltation wanes and the normal consciousness has a chance to assert itself against the flood of power or light from above. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says there is a resistance that has to be fought out or worked out. Fought out if the nature is unsteady, or resist violently, worked out if the will is steady and the nature moderates in its reactions. On the other hand, if there has been a long preparation and the resistance of the nature have been already been dealt by the psychic or by the enlightened mental will, then there are no primary or later aggravations but a steady and quiet pulsing of the change. The remaining difficulties fall away by themselves as the new consciousness develops, or else there may be no difficulties at all, only a necessary readjustment and change. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says yoga has its own difficulties, whatever yoga it may be. Moreover, it acts in a different way on different seekers. Some have to overcome their difficulties of their nature first before they get any experience to speak of. Others get a splendid beginning and all the difficulties afterwards. Others go on for a long time, having alternate risings to the top of the wave and then a descent into the gulfs, and so on till the vital difficulty is worked out. That is the case. Others have a smooth path, which does not mean that they have no difficulties. They do have plenty, but they don't care a straw for them because they feel sure that the divine will help them to the goal, that He is with him, He is with them, even when they do not feel Him. Their faith makes them imperturbable. Their faith makes them imperturbable. And Lord Sri Aurobindo says, for yourself, it seems to me that the consciousness is growing towards the point at which there can be the decisive change, upwards and inwards, decisive and effective. And there is no cause for depression, for that change is the one thing needful. The difficulties that remain, although not identical, are similar in their cause and fundamental nature to those who have their either largely or completely overcome nature, and they can be conquered in the same way. It is a question of time and of acquaintance within yourself in the pressure from the divine which makes man change. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says human nature and character of the individual are a formation that has arisen in and out of the inconscience of the material world and can never get entirely free from the pressure of that inconscience. As consciousness grows in the being, born into this material world, as consciousness grows in the being, born into this material world, takes the form of ignorance, slowly admitting or striving without difficulty or with difficulty after knowledge, and human nature is made of that ignorance. Character is made by the elements of ignorance. It is largely mechanical, like everything else in the material nature. And there is almost a resistance, invariably, stubborn resistance to any change. Especially in the physical parts, the physical body, physical mind, physical life movements, there is this resistance, the tamasic element in nature, which the Gita describes as absence of light, a tendency to inertia, inactivity, unwillingness to make an effort. Even when the effort is made, a constant readiness to doubt, despond, despair, to give up, renounce the aim, and endeavor collapse. And Lord Sri Aurobindo says, if the call of the soul is there, if the call of the soul is there, although not yet full, however great and obstinate the difficulties, there can be no final and irretrievable failure. Even when the thread is broken, it is taken up again and reunited and carried to its end. There is a working in the nature itself in response to the inner need, which, however, slowly brings about the result, but a certain inner consent is needed. The progress that you have marked in yourself is due to the fact that there was a consent in the soul and also in the part of nature. Change was insisted by the mind and desired by a part of the vital, resistance in the mind, part of vital, and difficult but could not prevent it. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says the strong development you observe in your power with its proof in response to others is due to the same reason. Part of your being consented, wanted, needed it as a self-fulfillment of the nature, and soul wanted it as a means of service to the divine. The rest was due to the pressure of the divine force and my pressure. As for the distaste, lack of interest, this is temporary. So far it comes from a kind of vairagya. It may be helped in overcoming your attachments, but it is defective in so far as the element of tamas is there. It is not so fundamental to resist the victorious drive of the divine force. You ask what I want you to do. What I want you to do is that you should persist, give more and more assent in you, which brought about the progress you made so far that here too the resistance may diminish, eventually disappear. The divine may be difficult, but his difficulties can be overcome if one keeps at him, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo.